Well, everybody, Keith here again. I haven't done any orchid videos for quite a while. Fundamentally, I've just been trying to keep up with everything. I'm still, in truth, recovering plants, still losing plants from when I was ill, and that's very nearly 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in March since I was rushed into hospital. So I am going through my normal weekly maintenance routine for all of them, and I have a couple of things which I hope will be interesting. It's partly a what's in flower, although I won't be bringing all of them out. But what I would like to just show you is a couple of plants which I've changed the way I've kept them, and it seems to have made a massive difference to how well they're doing. So let's start with that. Right, this is Restrepia falkenbergii, and that is, as I hope you can see, this here is in flower. And Restrepias have one of the most bizarre orchid flowers of the whole family, I think, because they are so fused from what we would think of for something like a phalaenopsis or whatever. But I have struggled very, very badly trying to grow Restrepia. I've got 3, and none of them were doing very well, being kept conventionally in bark. And I was close to losing this one, and I thought, well, there's nothing to lose. And I had this thing. This is actually the bottom half. I don't know if you can see the edge here, but that is the bottom half of a glass egg, if you like. It sort of sits about this big, and it's for using as a little orchidarium or whatever. I actually bought it with some air plants in there. Was it air plants? No. The land-based orchids. Oh, it doesn't matter. The ones that you tend to grow for the leaves rather than for the flowers. And I did no good at all with those. But it left me with this thing doing nothing. And so I thought, well, I can't lose anything by it. If it doesn't work, well, it doesn't work, and I've just lost another Restrepia. If it does, well, so much the better. So I got some moss and perlite and mixed those together. And I just took the Restrepia out of its pot and laid it, literally just laid it across the top of the moss and put the lid on, left it to get on with it. And it has absolutely loved it, as you can see. It's doing very well. Now it's got to the point where I've either got to put it into something else, what I haven't got the faintest idea, or just leave the top off, which is what I'm doing at the moment. And it's not doing quite as well as it was, which is hardly surprising. I've changed the amount of humidity, but it's still growing quite well. We've still got, again, I don't know how well you're going to pick this up, but there are still some new things, coming. Everywhere you look, there's new leaves and new roots and so on. And it's flowering fairly steadily. We've had, I don't know if you can see the number of these white hair-like things, which are the remains of the flower spike, but it's flowered really, really well. And I just thought, well, perhaps that's something that people need to know about, so give somebody else a chance. And basically, all it amounts to is I put some water in this, or fertilised water or whatever, and then leave it for a bit to soak into the moss, pour it all away, it'll come off, and then let it pretty much dry out, not quite necessarily, but pretty much dry out, and then do it again. If the lid's on top, then it takes weeks on end. But in that case, you've got to be extremely careful that you don't overdo it, because like all of these, there's a difference between plants that like humidity and plants that like wet feet. And there aren't very many orchids that like wet feet. Now, the other success story due to moss is this little thing. This is Gomesa crispa. I did have another Gomesa years ago, which I lost, did well for a while, and then I lost. And I saw this at a show and I thought, oh, I've got another Gomesa, we'll give that another whirl. But this is a much bigger species. The whole thing is much, much bigger. And it's more tricky to grow. It wants more humidity, it wasn't happy, it was putting up concertinaed leaves, and it didn't flower. And the flowers, all right, this is starting to go over a bit, but you can see you've got a long spike, dangling spike, lots of flowers. The flowers are not particularly eye-catching in themselves, but it's a nice little display. But again, these things do grow very long roots, and I had this one which sort of came out of the top of the plant, was waving in the breeze, and I'm thinking, well, it can't be happy then. And I repotted it, and it's still in bark, but I was thinking, well, it can't be happy, and I couldn't persuade that to go in. So in the end, I thought, well, I've had quite a good result from putting the Restrepias on moss, so I'll do the same with this. So I've taken this bark-filled pot, I've put moss around it, and just like the other one, I water it most weeks, and then I let this dry out, pour off any excess, and it's flowered for the first time in several years, and I've got a little new growth coming just there. So that's a couple of plants which, if you like, I've come a lot closer to doing well with. Now, another one that I'm very pleased about is this one. It's one that I haven't done well with for quite some time. It's kind of ticked along, but the last year or so I've had some strong growth from both ends of the rhizome. And this is Dendrobium kingianum, but it's the Silcockii variant. Got a very sweet little flower, typical of the Australian end of the Dendrobium family. And it's doing very well. We've got some nice roots coming off the base of these canes that are flowering. You can see I've got this one's in flower. This one's coming into flower with 2 spikes. There's another one coming into flower around there, and there's even a little one just there, which has got a flower spike starting off an old tip. So it's, again, it's one that's come back to life, is over egging the pudding somewhat, but it's one that I haven't done this well with before. I'm not sure what it is really, except that this year I treated all my Dendrobiums, the Nobiles and the other types, more harshly than I often have done in the past. These things, by and large, are tricky for me to grow. I don't have any artificial light. So This time of year, when the temperatures drop, which they do need, they don't get as much light as they would in nature. The great majority of Dendrobiums, particularly the noble types, they grow on trees which are deciduous. So in the summer, they get shade, but they get massive amounts of water. They get absolutely drenched more or less every day. Come the winter, the leaves on the trees drop off, so it's cooling down, it's getting much drier. A lot of people say don't water them at all. That's wrong. They get some water, but it's very little. So they'll just get enough to stop them suffering and no more. And that triggers blooming. But the problem is they want it cool, but because the leaves have dropped, they want more light, which I can't always give them, which means that nobelies will flower for me. And I've got several that are coming into flower. I haven't flowered yet, but I never get the massive sort of shows of flowers that you get when you buy a noble type from a supermarket. Most people won't, because getting it to do that, you are very, very lucky. Anyway, a very quick one. I hope this has been of interest. I hope it's been a bit of use to people as well with my idea for growing Restrepias. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you around. Bye.